They stole my land, so I drowned their homes. That's the line I never thought I'd say out loud. But it happened. And I'll never forget the sound, the rush of water crashing through concrete, the screams of HOA board members as they realized their $1 million homes were about to be swallowed whole. But before I opened the dam, before I pulled that heavy steel lever with my bare hands, I had to watch them steal everything my father ever worked for. I grew up on 200 acres of riverfront land. My dad bought it in the 1960s, back when nobody wanted to live out there. It was wild, swampy, and peaceful. He and my uncles cleared it acre by acre until it became our home. We had cattle. We had fishing ponds. We even had a small dam built by my father's own hands with a few army buddies to keep the creek from flooding our fields. That dam wasn't just concrete. It was our family's shield. When my father died, the land came to me, and I promised him I'd never sell it. Not for money. Not for greed. That land was blood, sweat, and memory. But then the HOA showed up. It started small. A slick-looking man in a suit knocked on my door one summer morning. He smiled like a car salesman. Told me he was with Crescent Lake Development. Offered me a fat stack of money for the lower part of my land. I laughed in his face. No, I told him. This land isn't for sale. Not now. Not ever. He didn't argue. Just smiled wider. Then he said the words that made my stomach twist. Well, Mr. Thompson, whether you sell willingly or not, this area is going to change. It's inevitable. Should have known what he meant. But I'd not yet. 2 months later, bulldozers rolled in. At first I thought they were working on county property, clearing brush near the road, maybe fixing ditches. But no, those machines were digging into my soil, my fence lines, my pasture. I stormed out there. My voice shook with rage. What the hell do you think you're doing? One of the workers just shrugged, handed me a piece of paper. It was a development plan, signed, approved, stamped by the county. My jaw dropped. They had rezoned my property, declared part of it unused land, and the HOA developers bought it right out from under me. But that wasn't the worst part. When I called the county office to demand answers, the clerk on the phone said, "Sir, the paperwork shows you already signed off on this." Someone forged my signature 30-5 houses. That's how many they built. Cookie-cutter nightmares, all lined up like plastic toys. Every one of them worth more than my whole ranch. And the people who moved in, they weren't neighbors. They were parasites. Within a week, the HOA president, her name was Linda, but everybody called her Karen behind her back, knocked on my door. She didn't introduce herself, didn't smile. She just handed me a list of rules. Rules for me. Since your property is now connected to Crescent Lake community, she said, you'll need to comply. I stared at her like she'd lost her mind. The list said things like, no livestock visible from the road, no machinery or equipment left outside, noise restrictions after 7 p.m., and get this, mandatory membership dues. I laughed. Right in her face. Lady, I own this land. You don't tell me a damn thing? Her smile froze, and then she whispered, we'll see about that. From that day on, it was war. HOA members complained about my cows, about my tractors, about the smell of my barn. They called animal control. They called the sheriff. They even complained about my fence color. Every week, some notice showed up in my mailbox. Threats, fines, legal letters. I ignored them all. But inside, I was boiling. Because I remembered what that developer said. This area is going to change. It's inevitable. I realized this wasn't just about property lines. They wanted me gone. One night, I sat on the porch with my grandson, Jason. He's 16. Good kid. Loves fishing like my dad did. He looked at the line of houses, all lit up, glowing across the field. He asked me, Grandpa, why do they hate us? That broke something inside me. I clenched my jaw and told him, they don't hate us, son. They hate freedom. They hate people who can't be controlled. But inside, I felt helpless. Until one day I remembered the dam. You see, the new HOA homes were built on low ground. My father always said, never build where the river bends. She'll take it back one day, and those fools, they built right in the flood zone. Behind my barn, hidden by brush, was the old dam my father built. It held back a small lake, a big one actually. Enough water to cover those new lots knee-deep, maybe worse. For years, I'd kept it closed. Out of respect, out of peace. But now it felt like justice waiting to happen. The final straw came on a Sunday morning. I was fixing my tractor when flashing blue lights filled my driveway. Sheriff's deputies. Karen stood behind them, arms crossed, smirking like a devil. The deputy walked up. Sir, we've had multiple complaints about unregistered livestock and safety violations. You'll need to resolve this with the HOA board. I lost it. This isn't their land. This is mine. They stole it. And you're helping them? The deputy just sighed. Take it up with the county, sir. Then they left me there. Humiliated Karen winked at me before she got into her Lexus. You'll be out of here soon, old man. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the old blueprints of the dam. My father's handwriting marked every pipe, every valve, and that's when I knew what I had to do. The HOA stole my land. They humiliated my family. They wanted me erased, so I was going to show them what it meant to steal from a man who controls the water. I was going to open the dam. The night I decided to flood them, I didn't feel fear. I felt peace. That may sound crazy, but after months of harassment, lawsuits, cops at my gate, and HOA Karens breathing down my neck, I realized something. They had taken everything from me except my choice, and that dam was my choice. The next morning, I drove out to the old dam. It was hidden by trees, overgrown with brush, rust on the hinges, moss on the concrete. I ran my hands over the steel lever. Cold, heavy, waiting. I could hear my dad's voice in my head. This isn't just a wall, son. This is a promise that our land stays ours. And now, that promise meant something different, because if I pulled that lever, the water behind it wouldn't just wash out the creek bed. It would pour straight into the new Crescent Lake subdivision, right into those 35 homes they stole from me. I could already picture Karen screaming as the water rushed in, and I'll be honest, part of me smiled, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. I had to make sure. So I called my cousin Mark. He's a big guy, rides a Harley. Used to serve in the Army Corps of Engineers. If anyone knew about flooding, it was him. He showed up that afternoon, engine roaring, leather vest on, grinning ear to ear. What's the emergency cause? He asked. I led him to the dam. When he saw it, his grin faded. You're not thinking what I think you're thinking. I just stared at the water. Silent. Finally, he sighed. You know, if you open this, they'll come after you with everything they've got, right? Cops, lawyers, maybe even feds. I nodded. But if I don't, they win. They erase Dad's legacy. They erase me. Mark looked at me for a long time. Then he slapped my shoulder. If you're gonna do it right. And if you're gonna fight, you won't fight alone. Over the next week, the HOA pushed harder. Karen sent me another notice this time, demanding I pay $15,000 in dues and fines. Said if I didn't, they'd put a lien on my property. A lien. On land that's been mine since birth. I tore the letter in half, right in front of her. She gasped, like I'd shot her. You'll regret this, she hissed. That same night, Jason, my grandson, came running into the kitchen. His face was red with anger. Grandpa, they told me I can't fish in our creek anymore. What do you mean, our creek? I asked. They said it's private property now. HOA property. That was it. That was the last straw. The creek. The same creek where my dad taught me to fish, where I taught Jason. Now Karen and her board wanted to claim it as their own. I slammed my fist on the table. Plates rattled. That's it. They want water? I'll give them water. The plan became simple. Mark and I would open the dam during the night. Just enough to send a wave of water rushing into their subdivision. Not enough to kill anyone, but enough to ruin their precious lawns, their cars, their fancy new houses. A warning. But deep down, I knew. Once that gate opened, there was no turning back. The day before we planned to act, Karen showed up again. This time, she brought backup to board members, both smug, both holding clipboards like they were royalty. They stood on my porch like they owned the place. "Mr. Thompson," Karen started, "this is your final notice. If you don't comply, we'll take legal possession of this land. You'll be evicted within 60 days. My blood boiled so hot I thought I might explode. This land isn't yours. It never was. And you'll regret every second you stepped foot on it." Karen just smirked. "You can't fight progress." Progress. That word again. I didn't answer. I just shut the door in her face. Hard. That night the air was heavy. Thunderstorms in the distance. The kind that rattle windows and shake bones. Mark rolled up on his Harley. Jason followed us, flashlight in hand, determined to be part of it. We stood by the dam. 3 generations. 3 men. 1 choice. The roar of the water was deafening, even with the gate closed. Mark put a hand on the lever. "Once we do this, there's no going back." I looked at Jason. His young face was pale, but his eyes were fierce. "Grandpa," he said, "do it. Show them they can't take what's ours." My chest swelled with pride. I wrapped my hands around the steel, cold, heavy, alive, and the nye pulled. The sound was like thunder. The gate groaned. Water surged forward, white and furious. The lake poured through, a torrent unleashed. Jason gasped. Mark whooped like a madman, and me. I just stood there, watching decades of quiet restraint finally break free. Downstream, I could see the glow of house lights. Soon, they'd see what it meant to steal from a Thompson. By the time we drove back, the flood was already working its way into the subdivision, water pooled in driveways. Lawns disappeared under rushing currents. Cars floated, and there, standing in the chaos, was Karen, screaming. She was on her phone, shouting at 911 operators. Neighbors ran out in their pajamas, panicked, trying to move their cars, trying to block the water with sandbags. It was useless. The river had come home. I sat in my truck, engine off, headlights out, just watching. My heart pounded. My hands shook, but I felt free. For the first time in months, I wasn't the victim. I wasn't the old man they pushed around. I was the storm, of course. It didn't take long for the cops to show up. Sirens wailed. Red and blue lights flashed against the rising water. Deputies shouted, trying to evacuate people. Karen pointed in my direction. Even from across the field, I could see her face twisted with rage. She knew, but she couldn't prove it. Not yet. Mark leaned close. "They'll come for you tomorrow. Be ready." I nodded, and as I drove home that night, rain pouring down on the windshield, I knew part 1 was over. The dam was open. The water was flowing, and the war had just begun. When the sheriff knocked on my door the next morning, I already knew the war had come home. I barely slept that night. The roar of the flood was still in my ears, pounding like a drum. Jason had finally dozed off on the couch. But me? I just sat at the table, sipping cold coffee, staring at the photographs of my father hanging on the wall. "Did I do right, Dad?" I whispered, no answer. Just the hum of the fridge. The creak of the old house settling, then dash knock dot heavy. Official. Through the window, I saw the sheriff's cruiser. Lights still flashing. And behind him, a line of HOA board members, Karen right in the front. She looked like she hadn't slept either. But she was grinning. She thought this was it. I opened the door. "Mr. Thompson," the sheriff began. "We need to talk about last night." Karen cut in immediately, pointing her finger right in my face. "He did it. He opened that dam. He flooded our homes, our property. Arrest him." The sheriff raised a hand, calm but firm. "Ma'am, let me handle this." Then he looked back at me. His eyes weren't angry, more like tired. Double quotes, "Sir, did you open that dam?" I took a breath. The weight of the question hung heavy. Jason stirred on the couch behind me, listening. Mark's Harley was parked out back, silent but ready. I met the sheriff's eyes. That dam's been there for 50 years. Built by my father. Built to protect our land. If water came through, maybe it was because it was time. Karen exploded. Don't he play games? He admitted it. He's confessing right now. The sheriff sighed, then pulled out a folder. Here's the problem, folks. That dam is on Mr. Thompson's property, fully within his rights. County records prove it. We can't charge him for opening his own gate. Karen's jaw dropped. What? That's impossible. The other board members started whispering, pale as ghosts, but the sheriff wasn't done. And there's more. Last night, county commissioners reviewed the original zoning paperwork. Turns out, Mr. Thompson never signed those transfer documents. His signature was forged. I swear the air left the room. Karen froze. Her face twisted like she'd been slapped. That's not true. The sheriff turned his eyes on her. Funny thing is, the handwriting expert traced the forgery back to someone on your HOA board. And guess what? You signed off on every one of those documents. The board members stepped back. One of them even muttered, "Linda, what did you do?" Her face turned red. She shouted, "This is lies. He's paying them off. He's nothing but a bitter old man." But no one believed her anymore. Jason walked up behind me, standing tall even though he was just 16. "This land's ours," he said firmly. "Always has been. Always will be." For a moment, the sheriff's hard face softened. He tipped his hat to Jason. Then he turned back to the HOA crowd. "As of this morning, Crescent Lake HOA has no legal claim on Thompson property. Every house you've built beyond the original county line is standing on stolen land." The silence that followed was louder than any flood. The board members panicked. Their little empire was collapsing right there on my porch. Some argued. Some cursed under their breath. One woman even started crying. But Karen, she didn't back down. She marched right up, practically nose to nose with me. "You think you've won? You haven't seen the last of me? I'll sue you until you're ruined. I'll drag your name through the mud." I cut her off. Calm, quiet, cold. "You already ruined yourself, Karen. You stole. You lied. And now everyone knows." Her eyes burned, but I could see it fear creeping in. The kind of fear bullies feel when they realize they've lost their grip. By noon, word had spread through the subdivision. Neighbors whispered in the streets. Some packed their cars. Others cursed Karen's name loud enough for the whole block to hear. Jason and I stood by the fence, watching as moving trucks rolled in. "They're leaving, Grandpa," he said softly. "Yeah," I answered. The river took back what was never theirs. But the story didn't end with the water. 2 weeks later, county officials came back with paperwork. Not only were the HOA homes illegally built, but the developers had cut corners on flood permits. The dam wasn't the only danger. The land was never safe to begin with. Half. Those homes had to be condemned. Families sued the developers. The developers turned on the HOA and Karen. She disappeared. Some say she moved out of state. Others say she's still fighting lawsuits somewhere, broke and bitter. Me, I stayed right here, on my land. One evening, after the dust settled, Jason and I walked down to the creek. The sun was setting, painting the water gold. He looked at me and said, "Grandpa, do you think Great-Grandpa would be proud of what you did?" I thought about it. About the dam. About the flood. About the fight. Finally, I smiled. He'd say, "We did what we had to do. To protect the land. To protect the family. To stand our ground." Jason nodded. "Then I'll protect it too. One day, when it's mine." That hit me harder than anything. Because in that moment, I realized this fight wasn't just about revenge. It was about legacy. About making sure no one ever forgot that this land was more than property, it was home. And so, when people ask me if I regret opening that dam, I tell them the truth. No, because sometimes The only way to fight corruption is to let the water flow. And when it flows, it washes the lies away. So what do you think? Did I go too far? Or did the HOA get exactly what they deserved? Tell me your own HOA or crazy neighbor story down in the comments. I want to hear them.